Well, we've got some troubling news out of Afghanistan. Remember Afghanistan, the country we occupied for 20 years, bombed into oblivion? The country that we abruptly left last year after spending trillions of dollars with nothing to show for it? Like, if I spent $1 trillion, I at least would hope to have something nice for it, like a Nintendo Switch or something. We didn't get anything. Nothing. Remember that, Afghanistan? Well, before we left and the Taliban took over, the Biden administration made the unprecedented move to freeze all of the banks in Afghanistan, stole billions of dollars in Afghan money. Now, as The Intercept points out, the consequences of seizing the reserves of the central bank in Afghanistan would be similar to what would happen here in the United States. Think about this for a second. The U.S. economy itself would suddenly collapse, okay, if the Fed was suddenly seized by a foreign power. In Afghanistan, businesses have been unable to secure loans. Depositors have been unable to access money that was held in their banks. Importers have been unable to fund any imports. Imagine trying to run a business where you need to import certain items and you have to spend money to do so. Can't do it. You can't make a wire. Right? I try to import things all the time. You know, I've set up like my Bitcoin miners and those sorts of things. I need to import those from different countries, right? I have to then wire money to the transport service and all that. I can't do that. What are you going to do? Pay them with cash? Doesn't work that way. Their currency has collapsed.
It sounds like sanctions.
That's basically what it is. Might as well be, right? So their currency has collapsed. Their prices have skyrocketed. More than 1 million refugees have fled starvation since the fall of Afghanistan. Now, the co-founder of Afghans for a Better Tomorrow said that what the Biden administration just did was short-sighted, cruel, and is going to serve. Is going to be a worse catastrophe than is currently unfolding in Afghanistan. Taking money, which rightfully belongs to the Afghan people, will not bring justice, but will actually ensure more misery, he said, and more death in Afghanistan. Well, the Biden administration, we got some breaking news on this. It's continuing to unfold. The Biden administration folded a little bit on this because they had pressure. Hamid Karzai, of course, the former head of Afghanistan, said that this is an absolute humanitarian crisis of the Biden administration's own making. So the Biden administration caved a little bit, but maybe actually made it worse. So here's what the Biden administration did. They announced that it's going to split the money. Now, they took $7 billion. They seized $7 billion from the Afghan people. The Biden administration announcing yesterday that it's going to keep half of it. Okay, we're just going to keep half of your money. And we're going to put the other half of it into a fund. And we will decide how to spend that money in Afghanistan. Oh, wonderful. So just to be clear, we stole their money, we destroyed their country, and now we're taking half of the money that we stole and we're going to give it back in a way, but we're going to put it into a fund. And the United States will decide how we'll spend it. Sounds like a great plan, doesn't it? Because the United States can be really trusted to spend money effectively. That's one thing we know very well, is that the American people can trust their government to spend money however they see fit. Yeah. Right. So Masuada Sultan, she is an author of a book about Afghanistan. She was born in Afghanistan. She says that this is a death knell for the people of Afghanistan. Listen to what she says about this new move by the Biden administration.
Having me on. This was a devastating day for Afghans who were hoping to have a sign that their economy would have a chance of surviving and that they would be able to have a central bank, which the United States invested in. We spent 20 years building up a central bank in Afghanistan modeled on the Federal Reserve. And training people, building systems, transparency mechanisms, software systems that they could utilize to have a functioning banking system. And today, all of that is gone. As an American, as a taxpayer, I think it's a short-sighted policy, because here we are saying to the Afghan people that we know your economy is being crippled due to our financial policies, and at the same time, we're going to give you humanitarian aid. Well, we're creating a bigger and bigger humanitarian disaster by not allowing banking to function and not allowing the economy to be back on its feet. What Afghans need more than anything is food. Indeed, they need aid, but they also need jobs. They need an economy. They need to be able to import food. They need to be able to pay their teachers,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look at this little baby. I mean, they don't need a house. right? They're fine sitting by a fire in the frozen rocks. They don't need a house. They don't need help. They don't need anything. They don't need money. Come on. This little baby's doing fine.
Yeah, they chose to live there.
They chose to live there. They chose to live in Afghanistan. They chose to have their country bombed for 20 years and destroyed by the Americans and NATO allies, by the way. Like,
How
this little
ungrateful.
baby's fine. It's doing fine. No problems here. Well, we're now learning a new development in the story this morning. And follow me on this one, because it's really troubling. So I want to know about the cronyism and just how awful Washington is and how Wall Street, they're all just corrupt. They're all gangsters, frankly. They're all corrupt. Well, the lead attorney for the families of the 9/11 victims, follow me on this one. The lead attorney for the families of the 9/11 victims could now end up receiving that money that was seized in Afghanistan. Follow me. So it means that lawyers could end up seeing a huge windfall of cash thanks to the Biden administration. Now, they seized this money from the Taliban. They seized it from the Afghan banks. It wasn't even from the Taliban. They just seized it from the Afghan banks. Banks we set up. Remember, we structured their banking system to mimic the Federal Reserve in the United States. So we set it up, and then we took their money. So here's how this works. This attorney, I'm going to put his picture up here on the screen. There he is. There's Lee Wolosky. Okay, he worked in the Biden administration. Well, he left in January. Now, he's overseeing the lawsuit of 9/11 families who are suing the Taliban for damages. Now, this whole thing was a long shot. Right? The 9/11 families weren't pushing him to do this. He, as these high-powered lawyers, know that they could make a lot of money off of this if they get lucky, right? They take these long Hail Mary shots at things. They're going to sue this company. They sued the Iranian government. Didn't get anywhere. They sued the Taliban. You think that's going to get anywhere? Well, guess what? It's good news now for this lawsuit, because guess who has the money? Not the Taliban. The United States has that money. So that means now that this lawyer, these high-profile lawyers, can basically sign a legal brief, which is what they just did yesterday, asking the judges in this 9/11 families case to move against the Taliban, moving forward now towards a settlement. Because now the Taliban doesn't have this money. The U.S. government does. So, hey, we don't need to go and try to track it down now with the Taliban. Just go right to the U.S. government. Meaning that this could be a massive, lucrative payday for these high-powered lawyers. Think those families are going to get any of this money? And by the way, just to be clear, why should they? Like, I understand the hardship that has been had by the 9/11 families, right? Draw me a parallel here. Draw me a connection between like the families and business owners in Afghanistan who had their money in their bank accounts, okay? Why? Because now you're suing the Taliban, which was in charge at the time when Al-Qaeda was rooted in that country and launched an attack on the United States. What does that have to do with the mom and pop who own a little store and are trying to import goods to feed their family? Has no connection. Help me here. I can't figure it out. They tried to sue the Iranian government for helping Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden. They got nowhere. And the Taliban was not involved in the 9/11 attacks. You could argue, oh, they harbored Al-Qaeda. Okay. Did they launch an attack? No, it wasn't them. But hell, it doesn't matter, because if you're a lawyer, you can go after as much money as you want. So just to be clear, this money belongs to the Afghan people and their business owners. They are starving because we destroyed their country, and then we stole all of their money on top of it. And now we're handing it to basically lawyers in the United States who worked in the Biden administration.
I mean, they did work their butts off, you know.
They really did. They really did. And no wonder they left. No wonder he left the White House counsel in January. Because he knows a big money. Why would he leave that job? Because he knows. So he leaves this job in January, and then a few weeks later, he signs a brief going after. So he knew he couldn't have done it while he worked in the White House. He knows his money, his big money payday is there as soon as he leaves the White House. Files this brief. We got the money? Great. So 9/11 families, there's going to be a big payday for the lawyers, and then it'll be that's why class action lawsuits are a joke, right? Because, you know, the lawyers make the bulk of the money. The lawyers make like 60% of the money in class action cases.
Well, think about that.
The people that are hurt
sue
get
these
nothing.
Yeah, they sue these great big corporations, and the lawyers make a bank, and then you get a check for $10.
Yeah, or less. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, people get. And by the way, the
We
more
sued Sprint. Here's your $2.35 check.
exactly, and the more people they get onto the class, the more money the lawyers make. So and then also that means less money that you make as a person who was affected by the class action, the lawsuit itself. So this is how the United States operates. And I just forget about this lawyer for a second. Just think about these families, right? Think about these families in Afghanistan who went to try to, they know the Taliban are coming. Okay, they want to get some of their money out of there to maybe protect their family, to put food on the table, or to escape. And then they find out, they go to the ATM. They go, and you just saw those lines at the ATMs. They're just locked, done, closed. The banks are gone. Money seized. U.S. government has it. Sorry. We bombed your country for 20 years. Spent $2 trillion. We set up your banks. We're going to take our money back.
Yeah, so if we ever come and bomb your country, just, let us rebuild, but don't let us set up your banking system.
Right. You want a banking system like ours. Really, just heartbreaking. And to think, this time of year in Afghanistan, I mean, you see those images of those like kids on the, sitting on the ground and sitting by fires. Like, this is video from like this past week in Afghanistan. Really, really troubling. But this is what we've got. Look at that little baby sitting by a fire. Good idea. Let's split the money in half. We'll give half to the 9/11 victims, and we'll give half. We will recycle that money into humanitarian aid. So we'll just send them food. It's like someone coming into my bank account be like, Clayton, we don't think you're a good steward of your own money, so we're going to steal your money. We're going to cut it in half, and I'm going to give half to these lawyers over here for no reason, and then I'm going to give the other half to your neighborhood.
I mean, that's what GoFundMe was going to do with all the donations for the truckers. They were going to say, well, we're not going to give it to the truckers. We're going to give it to some organizations that we deem appropriate. It's kind of the same thing.
Right. We're going to pick our, I'm sure they probably have no connection to the friends of the owners of GoFundMe, like kickbacks and other things. I'm sure that's totally clean, totally legit. Wonder why I'm a cynical bastard. I mean, this is why, right? I mean, as Mark S. in our chat says, please quit trying to make sense of this non-logical stuff. Behind mandates and shots and passports, the ruling elites have been playing chess for decades, and we are just playing checkers. We are debating checkers, and this is planned. I can't disagree with you. But see, the thing is, Mark, when you say something like that, then you're just a crazy conspiracy theorist, right?
Yeah, take off your tinfoil hat.
Until 2 years from now, Mark, when you will be proven right. And people will say, oh, we were making fun of you, Mark, a few years ago when you were saying this was all part of a broader agenda.
Yeah, it's funny when Alex Jones becomes credible.
Yeah, right? I mean, it's crazy. I mean, he says a lot of crazy stuff, but a lot of what he has said has come true. So can you throw the baby out with the bathwater? Can you throw the Alex Jones baby out with the bathwater? No.
I mean, you look at like Alex Jones, tossed off of Twitter, tossed off of all social media, and then you look at somebody like Rachel Maddow, got away with 3 years of Russian propaganda and misinformation and outright lies, and she's still celebrated.
Yeah. We're going to be interviewing Carol Roth. She is the author of the book called The War on Small Business, how the government used the pandemic to crush the backbone of America. And her reporting on this is astonishing. I mean, her details and journalism are fantastic. I encourage you all to read this book. She writes, and here's just a little snippet. In 2020, the American economy suffered the biggest financial collapse in history. But while Main Street suffered like never before, the stock market continued to reach new highs. How could this be? The answer is that the government had slapped oppressive restrictions on small businesses while propping up Wall Street and engineering a historic consolidation of power and wealth, which is exactly what happened, by the way. And she says this isn't a new problem. During the last financial crisis, Washington bailed out large banks, saying that they were too big to fail. And when the government finally pushed out the CARES Act in 2020, it clearly favored the wealthy and the well-connected, showing that small businesses were too small to matter. there's the data. It's right there. I mean, so why would the government, by crushing small businesses, it helped move those small guys out of the way for the big businesses, right? When a super Walmart comes into town, they have a lot of work to do to kill small business, right? But what if you do it for them? What if you're the government and you do it for them, right? And all the political contributions and everything that Walmart then makes to political candidates. I mean, it's great, right? It really feeds itself.
That is the reason why I've been so against the federal $15 minimum wage, because the Walmarts, the Targets, the McDonald's, the big corporations, they can withstand that. They're going to be like, okay, yeah, we can pay $15 an hour as a minimum wage. But small businesses that are just getting started, in many cases, cannot. And people are like, screw them then they shouldn't be in business. But the thing is, that is a planned thing. I remember a legislation that came into place from the Waldorf Astoria. They lobbied Congress, and they got this sprinkler system approved, and you have to have this specific sprinkler system in hotels, and it literally overnight put mom and pop hotels that couldn't afford to retrofit their hotels with this system out of business. And that stuff is planned. It's planned. I don't know if it's called planned obsolescence, but they do this intentionally to squash their competition. And that's what this was. 200,000 small businesses went under during the pandemic.
Yeah.
While Mitch McConnell's wife gets a loan.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly the case. Someone in the chat was saying, Alex Jones. Yeah, I agree with you. See, that's the thing, right? Nebraska Covington says, I tossed Alex Jones off my hill when he said that the Sandy Hook nonsense. Wrong hill to die on, Alex. I agree with you on that. Like, that's the problem, right? He says something as stupid as what he said with the Sandy Hook thing, and then he's totally discredited all across the board, right? And then, of course, we saw Sandy Hook parents over the weekend, or just yesterday, won that big suit against the gun manufacturers, Remington. So millions have to settle. So that sort of sets a precedent in the United States now on suing gun manufacturers on this. But yeah, Alex Jones. I don't need to go down an Alex Jones rabbit hole, but it's funny. A lot of the stuff that he pointed out and has called attention to, and he gets laughed at by the mainstream media. A lot of it has come true. So, well,
look at the percentage Nostradamus had come true, and they didn't write him off and some of his stuff was wacky as Alex Jones.
Well, and the bottom line is, Nostradamus was just pontificating, right? Or prognosticating, right? Like the groundhog. But Alex Jones has people sending him documents and actual information, right? So a little bit different than Nostradamus, right? He actually has data and many times facts and sourcing.
Hey, we don't know that somebody wasn't bringing Nostradamus data in the form of golden tablets in a hat or something. We don't know.
Maybe Joseph Smith was handing it to him. If you like this content, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Also, we have a membership program. For the price of a cup of coffee once a month, you can support independent journalism just by going to morninginvest.com/join.
You get access to exclusive videos, plus the ability to join and chat with us live. We really appreciate your subscription, and you are supporting independent journalism.